Good morning, my little Sunday morning littles. I have a little visitor here with us today. I know if you listened to my lesson last week, you heard this little visitor. Yeah, he had a little barking fit on the last little Sunday school lesson, and he barked really, really loud at the end of that lesson. And Miss Michelle just thought, well, I'm going to leave it there. And next week, I'm going to introduce you to this little guy. So, this little guy is my sweet little friend Charlie. He's been a very, very good friend to me this whole time that I've not been able to go a lot of places. He's my little Pomeranian. He is a sweetheart. He is. He has a really good personality and absolutely loves littles. He does because he's been around Maisie several times and he just loves little people. He does. I wanted you to see him. He's a precious little creature, isn't he? He is. He's a good little boy too. But if you ever hear any more barking on my lessons, right here's the culprit. Yep, he's a cutie patootie. Okay. All right. I'm going to let him go down and have a nice little nap. He'll probably go in there on the couch. So I'll let him go there, littles. I wanted you to meet him. And I also wanted to tell you that I have missed you this week and hope that your week was a good week. Mine was good. We are trying and planning, hopefully, to be back at my school soon. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that that is all going to happen and I'll get to see my first graders again. I do get to see some of you guys at services that we may have, worship services in our church, but I don't get to see a lot of you because we're still meeting online for our Sunday school. So I just wanted to go ahead and do your next little lesson on Joseph for you. If you remember, we have been talking about a man named Joseph, and we've had several lessons on him. In last week's lesson, we talked a little bit about Joseph being in prison, and this week our lesson is called Joseph the Interpreter. Now, in previous lessons, he's done some interpreting of dreams. And so if you see Miss Michelle's little dream bubble here, that can kind of remind you that he is an interpreter of dreams. And our story today takes place in Genesis 41, 1 through 57. Okay? All right. So let's get started with that little lesson. Now, in our last lesson, Pharaoh was looking for someone to interpret his dream. Pharaoh was, of course, the ruler, the high ruler, and he had some dreams, and he was very, very troubled about those dreams. If you remember, his dream consisted of 7 fat cows. They were fat and sleek, meaning that they were big, they were plump, they looked really good, they were slick, their coats looked nice, and 7 thin and ugly cows. Cows who looked like they might be starving. Yeah. He also dreamed of 7 good and plump stalks of grain and 7 thin and blighted or not fit to eat stalks of grain. Okay, so that dream happened in our lesson last week, and now Pharaoh is really in search of someone to interpret that dream. So we talked just a tiny bit about the time that had passed from the time that Joseph interpreted the dream of the cupbearer. But now the cupbearer is coming back into our story. Now it's been 2 years later, 2 years, and that cupbearer, of course, did not remember Joseph to Pharaoh when the Pharaoh reinstated him back to his job as the cupbearer. You'll see why in this lesson. At this time, the cupbearer remembers Joseph, the one who had interpreted his dream in the prison. The cupbearer is now remembering what he had said he would do for Joseph. He told Joseph at that time he would mention him to Pharaoh. He would remember him to Pharaoh, and possibly Joseph could get out of prison. Wow. It was all in God's timing, but not Joseph's, because we talked about that 2 years had passed since that time. Okay. Pharaoh sent for Joseph after the cupbearer had explained to Pharaoh about the man in prison interpreting his dreams. Then Pharaoh sent for him. He was brought out of prison, cleaned up, and made presentable, and stood before Pharaoh. Pharaoh told Joseph he had heard he could interpret dreams. But Joseph told Pharaoh it was not him, but God through him. Pharaoh told Joseph all about the dreams that he had had. And in this picture, you see Joseph is brought before him. Now, when it says at the top that he was cleaned up and made presentable, he was in prison. So he had to be all washed, cleaned up, and made to look like he could stand before a Pharaoh. Yeah, so he was pretty cleaned up in this picture. Looks a little bit different than he did in prison, doesn't he? Okay, now while Pharaoh is telling Joseph all about these dreams, then Joseph listened. He listened very intently. And he told Pharaoh something. He said, the same dream was revealed to you twice with two different objects. In the first dream, the objects were cows. In the second dream, the objects were grain. But the same thing happened in both of those dreams. This indicated that God had fixed the dream and that he was going to follow through and make it come to pass. Because the exact same thing happened in both those two dreams, with different objects. So Joseph really listened intently so he could give Pharaoh an interpretation of that dream. The interpretation that he gave to Pharaoh went like this. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all of Egypt. After these 7 years will come 7 years of famine. All the plenty from the 7 good years will be forgotten, and the famine will consume the land. Now I have several pictures here. Of course, I have the number 7, and I know you all can recognize the number 7. You're smart. The number 7 is significant in Pharaoh's dream. If you remember when he interpreted for the cupbearer and the baker, the significant number was 3. But in this dream, the significant number is 7. And he said that at the beginning, there will be 7 good years of plenty, meaning that their crops, whatever sort of crop that they grew in order to sustain and live, would be plentiful. They would have plenty. For 7 years, they would have beautiful, good crops. But then, after those 7 years, there would come 7 years of famine. And famine is a time when you have no food. If you look at this little picture here, this little man's starving. So famine means that the crops are no good. You can plant them every year, but they do not yield a good fruit or a good grain. They don't yield that. And a lot of times people starve during famines. Yeah. So Joseph is trying to help Pharaoh understand the significance of the number 7 and the significance of his dream in general. Okay, so 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, right? Joseph told Pharaoh that he needed to appoint a man who was discerning and wise. Now, if you're a discerning person, you can make really good decisions. You can tell what the right thing to do is. You can tell right from wrong. You are wise, of course. That means you're very smart. You're very quick thinking. You can solve problems, and not just problems for yourself, but maybe problems for other people. So Joseph told Pharaoh to pick a man or appoint a man who was discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Pharaoh should also appoint overseers to take 1/5 of the produce in the good years and lay it up so there would be plenty in the famine. Now, Joseph believed this, that food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine, so that the land may not perish through the famine, meaning that the people wouldn't die because they didn't have anything to eat. Okay? Now, who do you think Pharaoh should appoint? We've kind of talked about how Joseph seems to end up in the place of authority or made the manager or the overseer of everything he's ever done. And so I think Joseph would be a good overseer of this, and Pharaoh did too. And in this picture, Pharaoh is making it known that Joseph will be the man that is appointed to take care of this task of storing up food in the years of plenty so that they have it for the years of famine. And the way that Pharaoh did that was he had a signet ring and he put it on Joseph's hand. Joseph was given a chain of gold and royal attire or garments that he should wear, meaning he was going to be clothed in royal clothing, and he would have a chariot that he would ride around in. And the people that Pharaoh ruled over were to give Joseph respect and honor him for this job that he was doing. So Joseph was made second in command only to Pharaoh. In the 7 years of good, Joseph oversaw the storehouses and stored up 1/5 of the harvest each year. The storage of grain and produce could not even be numbered or counted. This would more than provide for the land during the 7 years of famine. Now, when the story tells us that the storage of grain and produce could not even be numbered, Joseph stored up so much in these big storehouses that he lost count of exactly how much he really had. He was really, really trying his best to make sure that the people had enough to do them and they did not perish through this upcoming famine. Joseph sold to all of Egypt during the famine, as well as other countries. So once again, God is with him, and he has placed Joseph in a place of high authority, or the honor of being in high authority, overseeing something that was a pretty big deal. Now, everybody is coming to Joseph during this famine time to buy their grain and produce and things so they don't starve. But someone is going to be coming next week, and you're going to be surprised at who comes to Joseph looking for food in order to make it through the famine. Okay? Now, this story is not extremely long, but it kind of gives you another idea about all the times that God was with Joseph. He takes him maybe to a place where is very uncomfortable and somewhere we wouldn't want to be, or Joseph wouldn't want to be, and then brings him out of that and places him in a high authority or an overseer position. And throughout each time that he does that, Joseph just lets him do it. He lets him do it, and he obeys, and he does exactly what he needs to do at that time. He's a true leader. And so next week, I think when we start that lesson, you'll be a little bit surprised at who's coming for some help from Joseph. Okay? Now, littles, I hope that you have an amazing week. And once again, as always, my prayer for you this week will be that you stay safe and you stay happy and take care of your little selves. If we do not get to meet again in our building the next time, then we will meet here on the computer and have our little story. I'm glad you finally got to meet my little friend Charlie. So if you hear him again, you'll know who that is. Okay? I hope you have a great week, littles. I'll see you next week.